everybody, about to get underway with our live stream Wednesday morning. Hope you're all doing well. G'day and welcome. Pretty excited to be doing our Wednesday morning live stream. Haven't done one for a while. If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Rod. I'm the founder of the Learn to Paint Academy, and this is our regular Wednesday live stream. Regular when we're not doing our major challenges or I'm not in lockdown, so which I'm not, so we're out, which is good. So welcome everyone, and we are going to have a bit of fun this morning. We're going to get back to basics, which I think is important. So good morning everyone who's tuning in. Good to see you all around the world, and I hope you're all well. I'm looking forward to doing some painting. So often after our challenges, I like and go back and do what I call studies, values studies. I think it's one of the best ways to improve your painting. So that's what we're going to work on today and maybe next week as well. So our Wednesday morning live streams, for those who are maybe new to what we're doing, are really designed for the beginner, intermediate sort of level. So we concentrate on basics and simple projects. Thursday mornings we do our advanced live streams as well. So for those who do some more, I'll be in the members area only, and then on Friday we'll getting better all the time. I just made a major decision to invest in something which is going to make the Learn to Paint Academy all the better than it already is. So if you have joined us recently, smart decision. G'day everyone. And one other thing before we kick off, I just want to show you this. This was sent to me in the post, which I was very excited about. I just want to do a big shout out to Rosalie down in Dargo in Victoria for sending me this beautiful portrait that she did of me. And I happen to have a frame that would fit, and I was pretty excited about receiving that. There you go. Just want to double check, is the stream coming through okay for everyone? I think my computer may freeze from time to time, and it should come back. So I may have to upgrade my computer. But before we get going, just let me know in the chat if it's coming through okay, apart from the occasional hiccup. But yeah, Rosalie, thank you so much. That was very touching, and it will be a treasured memento, I can assure you. So Steve's seeing the painting by Rosalie. It is a good painting of me. I think she captured the likeness quite well, and she made me look a bit trimmer than perhaps I am, which is always good. Okay, it says it's okay now. Yeah, I've got a feeling my computer keeps hiccuping, and that's why it gets a little frozen at times. So I will look at that this week, but for today we'll just... there you are, Rosalie. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sending that to us. And plenty of work to do before then. Let's have a look at what we're doing today. We're going back to basics, and we're going to do a values study. This is one of the photos out of our still life course, and there's a whole module in there on doing values studies for a couple of different reasons, right? The first thing is, if you can paint that in black and white, a grayscale, and make it look realistic, like there's volume to it, and that it has depth, and capture that and have a degree of realism, then you are so much further down the track of good landscape or seascape painting and even portrait painting than if you can't, right? So that's why I'm going to, you know, always keep coming back, especially after a major oh, it's no good that it keeps freezing. Bugger. Maybe the internet. Well, I'm just going to push on. What I'll do, I'll press the record button. I'll make a recording on my computer. So for anyone who has troubles, it'll be in the members area in the live stream recordings. Okay, so I'll just push on. I don't know that there's anything I can do about it just at the moment. I'll just carry on as though you're all getting me loud and clear. Okay, so I think it's important to keep coming back to basics, and you know, if you can recreate this in black and white on a canvas, just as a little study, you don't have to do it perfect, but so that it looks like it has three-dimensionality to it and depth and volume, then you are on the right track to becoming a very good artist, right? And you can start to capture things with atmosphere, depth, volume, and so on. So that's why I keep coming back to doing those little studies. The other thing is observational skills and drawing skills, right? It's really important doing a little study like this. Now, we've done cubes in the past. We also did that bowl. I don't know if you remember, but let me hold this up for you. We did that bowl, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. Okay, I didn't do a very good job. Not bad, but so that little bowl in this subject we've done before, and we will now put it together with the cube and the egg. Okay, so we'll see how we go. All right. Okay, so first things first is we are going to obviously do the paint, mixing the paint, right? So I'm going to do it as a grayscale. I'm not going to use black. I'm going to use instead our three primary colours. And I'm going to mix up a dark. So it's not black. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. We're just going to mix a dark. It doesn't have to be a perfect dark. And we're going to start off with French ultramarine blue, like so. And to me, this is a basic skill. You know, this is basic colour mixing. Three primary colours. When you mix all those together, you push towards the centre of the colour wheel, and you end up with a dark, right? So we're going to mix blue, red, and yellow. And I'm using the blue, red, and yellow that are my basic palette, which you should all be familiar with. Okay, and we don't need much yellow. That's about the ratio that I think will work. We'll find out, right? So it's ultramarine blue, permanent crimson, yellow ochre, okay, and then titanium white. So, and you can do this in acrylics, traditional oils, gouache, or as I'm using, water mixable oils. Doesn't really matter. Okay. Towards the center of the color wheel, which is a dark. Okay, and you can see I'm mixing up plenty of paint here because and I highly recommend doing these exercises. Like I would, if I had time, if I was, you know, just doing painting rather than teaching, I would be doing one or two little value studies like this every week. And I'll be doing it from life. You know, I'm using the photo here today, but the best way would be to do it from life with these little props, right? I've collected these props that you see in the photo over a period of time. Okay, let me just pop down some of that colour and just get a pinhead of white into that, just to check. Okay, mauve side. I'll get a little bit more blue and a tiny bit more yellow. Okay. You don't want to put too much yellow into it though, because it will lighten the value. If you've seen our values course and been through the values course in the Learn to Paint Academy, you will see that I convert all the colours into their respective values. And it just so happens that the yellow is a really light value. Difficult to see in colour. Okay. For you as well, don't let it be an issue. Okay, a chromatic black, exactly right. That's what we're mixing, right? I tend to, because whenever I use the word black, that it doesn't end up pure black. So I tend to think of it as just a chromatic dark, right? So this is on the purple side, what I've mixed up here, and that's okay. I'll get a little touch more yellow, but if I run the risk of too much yellow will lighten this off, and it won't be quite as dark as I'd like. But that could be okay too. All right, so now we've got that pile mixed up. In the center, I'm just going to mix up a 3 value scale. Why only 3? Because I can easily get to the intermittent steps as I go. Okay, so that's not a problem. I'll take a third of that white. Actually, yeah, just a little bit. The white, right? And a little bit of white, mix it aggressively. Should be able to do without really giving it too much thought. Now, that could be just a touch on the dark side. One thing I recommend is if you've done our values okay, and then we're going to have steps in between. I'm going to work on basically 5 values here. So I'll mix the along the way. Hopefully you've followed this part of it without too many problems. Computer or it's the internet, one of the two. And I can either just stop the live stream altogether or just push on. I am recording it, so hopefully the recording will come out okay, and then during the week I'll try and investigate what the issue is. But right now there's not much I can do unless we just stop altogether. but I'll push on. Okay, going to take my small brush, drawing brush, a little bit of water, just get some thin paint. And normally with our projects, we're really only concerned about getting big shapes in the right spot in the drawing step. But this is going to require a little bit more concentration and a little bit more focus in on the drawing here. So take your time with the drawing. Notice that everything's sort of just slightly off center, okay? And it's sitting like that point of that cube is around about there and around about there. Okay, and then that bowl sits up just slightly higher and the egg's in there. So finding some navigation points is going to be important. And I've got to be careful I don't get too much water in my mix there. Okay. So what I want to do is just try and get a vertical. Something like that. I really should have my glasses on for this, but that's okay. Now, the point on the top right-hand corner of the cube is just slightly higher than this point here. And it's ever so slightly higher, around about there, okay? And what that means is we're going to have an angle on this cube that's going to run through somewhere like that. The angle is going to be the same, okay? So that angle there and that angle there should be pretty much the same. And that's probably, yeah, that should be about right. And then if we drop a vertical down from there. So I'm just trying to feel my way through the drawing, and I may have to make adjustments, we don't know yet. That point there is just slightly off line, runs to about there, and that point, the top left-hand corner is higher than that point. It's actually around about there somewhere. Okay, but that would make that too steep. It wants to come in a little bit more like, that's not right. Okay, so that angle there is just slightly off. It wants to come up a little bit more to there, which means that that one there wants to come up a little bit more to there. Okay, so that angle there and that angle there need to be the same. That angle and that angle. Okay. And therefore that angle and that angle need to be the same. Okay, kind of looks a little bit distorted, but it's just the angle that it's on. Now I'm doing my cube too big. That'll just make your life easier. I don't know why I'm doing it that big. I should have done half that size, and I could have had a lot less stress today. Do yours smaller if you want. Don't do like Rod's doing. Do yours smaller. So it's that line there we're working on, right? And so this angle here, it's probably slightly more that way, but I'll go with that. That angle there needs to be the same there. So it's going to be around about there. Okay. And this angle here is going to be the same as that angle there. So therefore it's around about there. Okay, and we've got this shadow running out here. And it runs off of that point there. Okay. All right. It's not quite right. It doesn't quite feel right by comparison with the photo. So more square on that face there. Okay, it's not going to be square up there, but these two are going to be reasonably square. Okay, and then we have a shadow there, which is nice. It adds a nice feel to having that shadow there. And now we get into the bowl and the egg. Now the bowl doesn't quite touch. It's got a point there, and it's kind of on an angle, just the way the photo was taken. So we've got this feel here of I always find ellipses hard to do. Something I need to study a bit more. Okay, so the base of it is sitting up higher than that point there. Okay, now don't agonize over this. This is just a little bit of practice, just getting our eye in and getting our values right. So it's not designed to give you a nervous breakdown. It comes up in here, and I've done the bowl a little bit too small. Okay, that's a little bit flatter. It goes a bit more that way. Okay, and I've got shadow that runs in there, and it runs up to that point there. Okay, and then we've got shadow at the back there. Okay, so I'm going to pause in a moment, give you a chance to ask questions. And I know my proportions are out with the bowl and the egg. I'll just make the bowl slightly bigger. And it's all a learning experience. I haven't done as much painting in the last week as I'd like, being in lockdown. Being forced to stay home and all my painting gear being here in the studio, that was a little bit frustrating. So I decided to just have a bit of a break. And so I'm feeling a little touch rusty. Okay. There is a kick there, but I'm not going to worry about that. And yeah, so if you've got any questions, now would be a good time to start typing your questions in. And we'll get those answered. And this tone turned out quite nice. It's a nice neutral grey, which meant that I got my ratio of the blue, red, and yellow just right. Okay, is that there? All right, I'm feeling good about that. Again, I've made these objects too big. Yeah, I've made them too big, so that bowl is probably a little bit compressed. I'd probably, in hindsight, make it about half that size for these objects, just to make it easier. All right. There we go, that's step number 1 of the more method of painting, our drawing step. If you have any questions, we're going to pause briefly, and we'll come back to do the blocking. So now is a good time to type in any questions. Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions? Or shall I just push on? Actually, it might be Facebook that's causing the issue. Oh no, it's freezing on the side as well. All right, well, I can't see that we have any questions unless it's going miles behind. Push on, says Terry Ann. Pushing on, we will. And the bowl as well. So we'll get that dark in, but the darkest dark, as I say, is this one out here, um, which we'll preserve that dark for. So what I'll do is I'll just take a chunk of that and white, and we'll get that intermediate step happening. Okay, which is, I've taken too much white, so but I like doing block studies with cubes and rectangles and eggs and spheres, as you probably know. And one of the things that I've thought about is creating a product where you get a set of blocks or shapes, geometric shapes, and you get one in that's painted white, one that's painted, a sort of middle blue, one that's painted red, and one that's painted yellow. So each of the primary colours. So you get a set of blocks in each colour, white. So you'd have 4 sets of blocks, if that makes sense. And then using those blocks to set up your own little compositions like this, and practicing doing little studies, right? So that's one of the projects that I've had in mind for some time. They'd have to be manufactured and so on. So I don't know whether you guys would be interested in that. I've sort of collected all these little props over time. They're not perfect. But the idea of manufacturing a set of blocks and then putting together like a DVD to go with it to explain about values and so on. Because to me, I always talk about the fundamentals of good painting. It's composition and design. Don't worry. And then values. So doing studies like this gives you the practice of setting up a good composition and design if you're using the props yourself. But it also gives you observational skills and drawing skills, and an understanding of how you can use values to create 3 dimensions and realism. And then if you can do a study like this realistically, then no problem, right? Okay, it's roughly the same value. I think it's probably slightly darker, but I'm going to simplify because I want to stick to 5 values. So I'll simplify this, and that way we'll get a little bit of a lost edge in there as well. To me, this is the equivalent of like a concert pianist practicing scales. That shadow goes out to that point there. Okay, that's good. Get in that other shadow in there, which is this one here. Shapes there of the egg and so on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my darkest dark. I'm just going to edge underneath here, just so I don't have a complete lost edge there, and same through there. Just help me to keep sight of where the edges are. So there's a bit of reflected light catching into this bowl here. I might just go for that tone there. Is the opening of a round surface area like so. Okay, I think I'll continue with this tone for this egg. A little bit of adjusting, but that's okay. All right, I'm going to go back and put the background in here now. Yes, it is exciting news, and yes, I am going to keep you in suspenders. I might tell you on Friday. Just want to investigate a couple of things first. It's pretty black, isn't it? But then the photo is pretty black. But yeah, as I said earlier, if you've previously made the decision to become a member of the Learn to Paint Academy, and painting the background in allows us to Always feels good when you break away from from something you're trying to be careful with. You go a little crazy, but then you got to come back and go, you know, I've got to be careful here. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the cube, although getting better at my cubes. I just made it too big, that's not a problem. But I think my measurements are reasonable given that I've done it just by eye, rather than a ruler or anything like that. Because, you know, our observational skills are so important. This is why painting from life, plein air painting is a good thing to do. Just going to bring that down a little bit in between here. And this one actually comes in on an angle, so I'll just, like so. Now what I am going to do is I've got a little bit of messy lines there at the bottom, so I'll just take my paper towel and I'll just pull out a little bit, excuse me, just to pull, because it's quite thick paint. I'll just pull some of that out. Okay. And then I can come in with our lightest value, which is the tabletop. I don't want to do that in pure white. So I'll just take a chunk of that white. Already got a little bit too much actually. No, there we go. I'll just get more white to that. I'll save the white just to put a little bit of a highlight on. Oops. Get my brush nice and clean. Touch of water. See, it looks pretty much white. Doesn't on the palette, but when you put it up there against the black there, it kind of looks white. Okay. Now, often with still lives, I'll get to a certain point and then come in and put backgrounds in like I'm doing, because it just helps to define the shapes of the still life. Yeah, I got that angle wrong there. That should go more that way. So this is what I mean by developing our observational skills. Didn't look at the photo quite carefully enough. So I can potentially just pull out some of that paint there. Still not 100% right, but at least it'll be a little bit closer to the right angle there. Just bring that up to that point. A little bit too much in line. doke. There's a little bit of sort of a hazy feel to that edge out there. What you can do is just get a dry brush and just feather the edge where those two meet. But I'd probably just let it just tack off a bit before I do that in oils. Probably the same along that line. I'll just blur it a bit. Okay. So as we get these backgrounds in, or the tabletop and the background wall, we start getting more of a feel now for our subject. Going to have to come back and do a little bit of tidy up if I muck up my lines. All right. So you can see the light working, the lighter parts of this working now. So let's pause briefly, see if anyone's still watching. See if you've got any questions, so feel free to type in a question. Gail, the Brian Cook will be later this week, early next week, as I've said all along. And what will probably happen is I'll start with 2 projects and I'll add the others as we go. Pauline's bought herself a painting box and a tripod. Very good, Pauline. Midge is still here. Good on you, Midge. So is Heather. Cool. You can do yours in black and white, Jenny, of course. Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions before we push on? Will the edges of the shadows be blurred eventually? Yeah, possibly if I remember to do it, but I would suggest that if you look closely at the photo, there are some blurred parts, so just copy as per the photo there. Thank you, Gail. Connection today. The canvas size is a 16 by 20, but I don't think it really matters. I've used a 16 by 20. Gary, I think that's probably relevant, yeah. There's different ways of blocking in, and one way is to block in just using like a burn umber. and creating a values pattern with burn umber. So that's one approach that can be beneficial and over it. I think you've got to find an approach that makes sense to you and works. And you know, that's why in the more method painting I always talk about setting up your values structure first before you move to colour. Whether you do that with black and white, grayscale, or a burn umber type of approach, really it's an index. Okay, now in putting in that background, I'm mucking up a few lines, so it's a logical next step just to re-establish that. So let's go and do that. Who's got my glasses? Oh, there we are. All right. That didn't work out so good. Dry clean brush. Okay, make sure it's dry and clean. And then all I do is just come in here and just feather up these edges a little bit. It's probably a little bit too wet to do it properly now. I'd prefer to wait until it was just slightly tacky. In the photo, the edges are all a bit soft and blurry. This one's already fairly blurred. Yeah, the paint's too. A little bit. But something like that is what I would do. Okay, I have to come in and get these faces in here. And I'd say that these are kind of a step down from this value really. So I'll just take some white, just lighten that off. In fact, probably quite a bit down. They're roughly the same value as the tabletop. So let's just blur those together. Probably going to need a smaller brush to get in those edges there. Yeah, there's different ways of blocking in, as per Gary's comment. There's different approaches to blocking in. Starters would block in slightly different to the way I block in. The way I block in is pretty much more of a traditional method, but I learned it from older Australian artists who were plein air painters, and they were blocking in a certain way that would allow them to work a la prima. But there's other ways of blocking in. And Richard Schmidt's book, A La Prima, #2, he talks about, I think, 4 or 5 different approaches to blocking in, which is a great book, not a cheap book. Richard, of course, passed away recently, which is okay. Where I often struggle with doing cubes is when I come to this top up, mucking my lines up. Not today though, he says with great optimism. But yeah, that's a bit of a trap. These are the, depending on what angle you're painting it from, these can be tricky, these angles here. And I've definitely got the wrong brush for this. See, my brush is all squished up. I'll just swap that out for a smaller brush for the time being. Not that one. I'm not going to get that perfect. But see how that cube, hopefully it's looking this way to you. That cube now has a feeling of three-dimensionality to it. And the only reason is because of values and also getting the drawing accurate, or reasonably accurate. It should look like it's standing out for you. Okay. This bowl represents a bit of a tricky scenario. The inside, it's got a few different value shifts inside. I'm just going to simplify. Which is not accurate to the photo, but for the purposes of demonstrating live and time frames, it will make more sense. Yeah, I really need to study my ellipses a lot more than what I have. Not to worry. And we get a little pinhead of pure white. Which of course it's going to disappear anyway, or sorry, it won't disappear, it's going to not be pure. So there's a far more contrast between those two areas than what you'll see in the photo because I'm simplifying, compressing it down. Now, there's also reflected light happening in here. Up in through there. And over on this side as well, there's light bouncing off the cube. So this is where our observational skills need to really be fine-tuned. And the only way I think to fine-tune them is to do what we're doing right here. Okay, so my shape of the round mouth is terrible. lighter value. And it kind of falls. It's not a sphere, obviously, but that therefore changes how we paint it. Bit of reflected light up under. Okay. I'm getting quite thick paint up there now, so it's important that I concentrate. Reflected light around. Refining it. And where do you stop with refining it? It's a big question. I'm probably about to stop now because I think we've achieved our basic objective. And I'm not trying to paint a finished work, it's just a study. So if it was going to be a finished work, then I'd still have a bit of work to do, I feel. But as a little study, takeaways for me is I feel like my cube drawing angles wise, freehand as a demo has improved, but my not going too fast at the start has meant that I've drawn. Terry Ann's asked an interesting question. She said it looks more purple on the palette here than what it looks up on the canvas. So there's a couple of reasons why I suspect that would be the case. The first one is just lighting. It's really difficult to get consistent lighting in the studio here. That would be the first reason I suspect. But the other thing is, when you look at the palette, you've got blues, reds and yellows. And so that affects how the camera sees it, but also how you see, because you see everything relative. Okay, when it comes up on here, there is no blue, red and yellow. So you're seeing it more relative to the black and the white tabletop. That's my theory. I don't know if that's 100% correct. I'd say lighting and two different cameras sources as well. The pallet's got a different camera on it, so it's a combination. Intermittent issues. Let me know if you have any questions before we wrap up. I feel like that line is leaning in a little bit. It should perhaps be leaning out a touch, but it's a tweak for another time. And this egg's a little bit harsh. I can do a better egg than that. But like my lips, I need to practice more. I promise you, if you get good at doing studies like this, even if you just did one a week, there's plenty of photos in the I promise you, it'll improve your overall painting so much. I used to do a lot of these in the early days, and surprisingly, they all sold on eBay. Little studies, I think people like that little bit of an insight as to how an artist develops their career and what studies that they do. There is a rim shot around that bowl there, but I'm not. A little weak painting. All right. Pulling up stumps, as they say in the cricket. Clean my hands up a bit. Let me stand back and have a look. Yeah, the egg's not great. Yeah, it's a little bit patchy. I'll just got a lot to paint up there, so it is what it is for today. The shape of it's not quite right. Maybe I'm being too critical for a demo where I can't stand in front of it. I don't know. Okay. Heather, not always, and what I was talking about, Heather's asked, do I always do the studies in grayscale? When I was talking before about getting up a set of blocks made up and having one with each of the different colours. So, if these were all, if the cube was blue and the bowl was red and the egg was yellow, for instance, then that will train us to see how to mix a dark blue versus a light blue and so on. So there is value in doing studies, in monotone as well. So I definitely recommend that. If you can get the props. Awesome, very good. I kind of like the way it's clustered up in that top third up there, rather than being right in the centre. Also gives room for the shadow, so I think that's working well. Pauline says, do you think the old masters did regular studies like this? Pauline, the old masters would go to an atelier, which was where they studied under, a master painter. And it was usually 4 years, full-time study. They'd be there 50, 60 hours a week. And for the first year, all they did was so yeah, absolutely they did. Drew and painted from. Anyway, better than the live stream version. Gail, the values course, also the still life course where there's lots of values studies like this. So I would basic information. Jenny's got her new glasses. Good on you, Jenny. I need to get mine adjusted. They're become loose. Refresher on value studies before I start the August challenge. Yes. Master artists that we've analysed. Thank you, Magdalene. The oils course in the Learn to Paint Academy, and says there's values studies in there. So I pretty much put values. There. Hope that's been of help, even though it's been a technical issue. But I appreciate you all joining me. I'll try and see if we can fix things up for tomorrow. Tomorrow's our advanced live stream, which will be in the members area only. You'll need to log in via the members area. And then on Friday, we'll be back with our coffee. So look out for that. That'll be back on Facebook and the members area. So please go and check that out. And we'll do Terry Ann. Thank you. Gail's doing the abstract course. Very good. Andrew said, great brush up session, Rod. I'm now about to paint an antique light globe. Fantastic, Andrew. Look forward to seeing that.